My family and I love to go camping, but one particular trip tainted our love for camping. We were all excited as we packed our camping gear, loaded up the car, and set out on the journey to our favorite camping spot. The weather was perfect, and the anticipation of spending quality time together in nature. As we arrived at the campsite, we were astonished by the beauty of the surroundings, the trees, the lake, and the clear blue sky above. We set up our tents, organized the campsite, and started a crackling fire for cooking. The first day was all about hiking and swimming in the lake, and that night we were telling stories around the campfire. First we were sharing cheerful and funny stories, but then my brother decided to change the mood by sharing a scary story. His story was about a mysterious creature that wanders around the forest that night, an abnormally large creature that can shift into any animal whenever it wants. My parents laughed it off, but I could tell that it made all of us a bit spooked. It was getting late, so we decided to go to sleep. I was laying in my tent for around an hour because I couldn't go to sleep. When I was laying there, I began to feel a very weird sensation, something I had never experienced before. I felt like this for at least 30 minutes. Honestly, I was too scared to look outside of my tent to hopefully find out what it was. But after 30 minutes, I finally gained the courage to look outside of my tent because I was genuinely curious about the sensation. I peeked my head outside of the tent and looked around. Right when I was going to give up, I realized I could see someone in the distance behind the trees. It looked like they weren't even trying to hide their presence, but the more I looked at this person, the less it looked like a person. It looked way too tall to be a person. It had to be at least 8 feet tall. The more I looked at this creature, the stronger the sensation became. It got to a point where it felt like I could not take my eyes off this creature. I even began walking towards the creature, even though I was terrified. Once I almost made it to the trees, my dad yelled out my name. He asked me what the hell I was doing and why I was walking like I was drugged out or something. That's when I noticed it looked like the creature's eyes were glowing, and it seemed to be even larger than before. At that moment, we could hear a terrifying scream. It sounded like it was half human and half animal. At that moment, my dad told me to wake my brother up, and that we were gonna get the hell out of there at that moment. We got our belongings and left our tents. We went straight for the car and drove home. It turns out my mom and brother woke up because of the scream, and they asked us what it was. My dad told them it was just an angry bear, but I think we both knew it was something far from just a bear. Looking back, it felt as if the gaze of this creature was hypnotizing me to walk towards it. If it weren't for my dad, I can't imagine what would have happened. My dad never told them about how he catched me almost walking into the forest. I don't know if he saw the creature himself, but it sure as hell was not just some bear. During spring break, my friend group decided to go camping in order to get away from everything. I myself was eager for the trip, since I was so stressed because of school. I could finally get away from homework and studying all the time. After packing, we stopped at the liquor store to buy some beer and smokes. After this, we were on our way to the campsite. When we got there, we walked a good amount into the forest in order to be in a secluded area and try to avoid other people. We set up our tents and started up a fire. Now fast forward to that night, pretty much all of us were pissed drunk, and we were having a good time just goofing around. That's when I had to take a leak, so I walked away from our campsite. I was taking my leak when all of a sudden it sounded like I could hear other people in the distance. It sounded like singing, but when I listened closely it sounded more like chanting. I was sure it was just another group of teens just messing around like we were, so I thought it would be fun to check it out. I walked for about 5 minutes toward the chanting and it grew louder and louder. That's when I began to hide so they wouldn't notice me, because I was sure it wasn't just a group of teens. What I was looking at had to be some sort of cult. This disturbed me so much that I sobered up at that instant. I remember being so scared that I didn't even want to move. The longer that I was there, the bigger the chance was that they would notice me. That's when I could hear one of my friends, Jason, yell out my name in the distance. The cult stopped in their tracks and looked towards the direction of my friend's voice. This is when they began chuckling. One of them said, "Let's see if they want to play," in the most creepy voice that I have ever heard. That's when I didn't care if they saw me or not. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. Once I finally made it back to my friends, I told them what I saw. I told them that we had to leave this place at that instant, but they looked at me like I was crazy. But then they realized I was serious because they know I'm not the type of person to joke about this stuff. That's when one of my friends yelled out, "What the fuck?" What he was looking at was a tall man standing behind some bushes. He was wearing the most realistic pig mask that I've ever seen. We all started to run towards the car as the man in the pig mask chased us. The man grabbed one of my friends, and my friend let out a gut-wrenching scream. We all went back to fight the man off, and my friend Luke hit the man as hard as he could with a big stick that he found. The man instantly fell to the ground, so we used this to our advantage to get the hell out of there. Once we made it to the car, we realized that there were countless people in pig masks waving at us from the forest. While driving away from the campsite, we saw a bloody banner that read, "Come back next time," with a pig face on it. That night we reported it to the police, but never received any information about if they were ever caught. This experience ruined camping for me.